You text them first, they reply. A few days later you text again, they reply again, warm, even friendly. Then one night you're bored, so you scroll up, and there it is. Every single conversation in that chat starts with you, everyone, and that lands harder than most people admit. Because it doesn't just feel unbalanced, it feels personal. Am I annoying? Do they actually like me? Or do they just tolerate me when I show up? But here's the strange part. A lot of the time it has almost nothing to do with you. By the end of this video, you'll understand why people don't text you first, the hidden habit that quietly trains people to never initiate with you, and the one small shift that changes the whole dynamic. Once I figured this out, my friendships felt completely different. And I figured it out during one of the most humbling weeks of my life. The week I realized I had become a service. For years I was a great texter. I checked in, I remembered birthdays, I sent the meme that made me think of them. I asked how the interview went, how the trip was, how their mom was doing after the surgery. I thought that's what a good friend does. Then one slow Sunday, I went through my phone, chat by chat, and I could not find a single conversation I hadn't started. Months of them. And I remember sitting there thinking, how can you show up this much for people and still feel this invisible? Now, here's where most people stop. They decide people are lazy, selfish. Nobody cares anymore, everyone's glued to their own life. But that explanation is too easy. Because those same friends texted other people first all the time. I'd see it. Group chats they started, plans they made. Which means the real question isn't, why is everyone so self-absorbed? The real question is, what makes someone feel the pull to reach out to you? And the answer stung a little. Here's the misconception. Most people think being a good texter means being reliable. Always responding fast, always checking in, never letting the thread go cold. But think about what that reliability actually does. I call it the thermostat effect. In every house there's one person who adjusts the thermostat. And because they always do it, nobody else ever touches the dial. Why would they? The temperature is always handled. That's what you've become in these friendships. The temperature is always handled. You text first, so they never sit in the silence long enough to miss you. You keep the thread warm, so reaching out never even registers as a job that exists. You haven't been rejected. You've been automated. And there's a second layer. Look at what your texts actually say. How was your day? How did the exam go? Did you land safely? Those are check-ins. They're kind, but they're service messages. They ask for a report, not a reaction. And a conversation made of reports feels like admin, not connection. Here's the belief that kept me stuck for years. If I keep showing I care, eventually they'll show they care back. Sounds fair, right? But the urge to reach out isn't about fairness. It isn't mathematical. It's emotional. And in a minute I'll show you the shift that changes it. But first, there's another reason people don't text first, and almost nobody talks about it. A shocking number of people are just bad at initiating. Not bad people, not indifferent, bad at starting. To you, texting first feels natural. To them, it's a small performance. They open your chat, type something, decide it sounds weird, delete it, and put the phone down. You never see any of that. All you see is silence. I had a friend like this. 2 years of me starting every single conversation. I had quietly decided she didn't really value me. Then a mutual friend said something that rearranged my whole head. She talks about you constantly. She just never knows how to start, so she waits for you. She was thinking about me the entire time. I just couldn't see it because I was reading her silence as a verdict. And that misreading is expensive, because the moment you decide silence means rejection, you get anxious, you double text, you over-explain. You start showing up with this faint smell of please confirm I matter. And nothing makes a person less likely to reach for their phone than that. So here's the shift, and it's ironic. The more reliably you feel every silence, the less room anyone has to step toward you. You're doing their half of the work, and then feeling hurt that they never do it. People who get texted first run the thermostat differently. They let the room get cold sometimes. Not as a game. Not some 72-hour rule. They just don't treat silence as an emergency. And when they do text, it's not a check-in. Compare these. Hey, how's your week going? That's a form to fill out. Now this. Just walked past that noodle place where you knocked the entire tray onto the waiter. I still think about his face. That's not a form. That's a scene. There's something to react to, laugh at, add to. One message asks for a report, the other hands them a feeling. And people text first when they're emotionally pulled, not when they're politely prompted. Listen to that again. Emotionally pulled, not politely prompted. So the shift is this. Stop being everyone's reminder app. Start being someone who is clearly in the middle of a life. Send the photo with no question attached. Share the opinion. Tell the tiny story. Then leave space. When you're a person instead of a service, the silence on their end starts to itch. And that itch is what a first text is made of. One last piece, and it matters. Sometimes people genuinely don't text first, and it still isn't about you. Some of your best friends are terrible texters and wonderful humans in person. Some are in a season of life that's quietly eating them alive. Some show love by showing up, not by typing. And some just aren't your people. That's allowed. The real damage isn't the quiet inbox, it's the story you build from it. One person doesn't initiate and suddenly it becomes, I'm forgettable, I'm too much, nobody would notice if I disappeared. That's a lot of verdict for one silent chat. People with real social confidence don't spiral over a quiet thread. They notice it, they adjust how much they invest, and they move their energy toward the people who move toward them. Because not needing every reply to prove your worth, that quiet steadiness is the most attractive thing you can bring to any friendship. So if nobody texts you first, don't rush to the conclusion that you're the problem. Sometimes they're frozen, sometimes they're drowning, sometimes it's just not a match. But remember the thermostat. If you're always the one adjusting it, step back from the dial and become someone worth missing instead. More scenes, fewer check-ins, more you, less service. That's what turns a contact into a person people reach for. So tell me in the comments, are you the thermostat in your friendships? And if this explains something you've been quietly carrying, subscribe. There's more where this came from.